Hi, I'm Diane Brady, Assistant Managing Editor at Forbes. We are here in Forbes Newsroom with Mark Penn, who is, of course, Chairman and CEO of Stagwell, Inc., as well as Chairman of the Harris Poll. Mark, welcome.
Thank you.
So, you have worked on both sides of the aisle for campaigns. I feel like I have to start with the midterms. Do you ever feel like you want to get back into it? Because you must have so many thoughts as to what just happened.
No, actually, I'm glad to be an observer who can give some commentary. Although what I enjoyed about when you're into it is you had tremendous resources to really know what's going on, as opposed to just having a little resources and kind of having to be an armchair commentator. But people always ask me, they say, do you like politics? I say, no, I hated politics.
Did you?
But yeah, I hated politics, but I liked governing.
Well, what's your take? I mean, I know you may not be sort of inside the camps, but what was it that the polls got wrong, do you think? Because I know there were some predictions of a red wave that didn't actually occur. Do you think we missed something?
Well, there was some exuberance at the end, but if you go back to our last Harvard-Harris poll, right, we had the congressional horse race at 50-50, and then we had, among most likely voters, 53 for the Republicans. And from what I can see, we were exactly right in terms of the polling. I think that there were a number of polls, particularly from more right-leaning sources, that got exuberant and were creating a sense that this was going to be different. At the end of the day, this was a divided country before this election, and it's a divided country after this election.
I would love to get your thoughts on Trump and what, announced that he is running. You've worked with the president. Has he come to you for advice at all?
Well, just to correct a little bit,
okay.
I never worked with President Trump. I did meet him twice.
Okay.
So I got a little insight into, how he operated. And what I can say is this is not his time to run. I don't think he should be running. I don't think he's going to win even the primary. I think people are deserting him left and right. I saw Vice President Penn, his most loyal supporter, try to explain gently on morning TV that he shouldn't be running. And I think everybody realizes after the midterms in particular, this is not his time.
Do you think it's the midterms that have really dictated that, or do you think even prior to the midterms it was looking unlikely that he would, be a viable candidate?
Well, he's a viable candidate. He's got a strong base. The voters are going to have to weigh, do they want him or somebody like DeSantis or Youngkin or Tim Scott or one of the other next generation Republican figures. But I think ultimately they will go that direction. I think that they realize that there's so much animosity in the country against him, and there's a lot of animosity against Biden as well. The truth is, neither of them really are the leadership that this country is looking for the future. The question is whether the party regulars will kind of get that message. I think clearly they have gotten that message when it comes to Trump. Look, he'll say, I presided over a good economy, I did the Abraham Accords, did all these things. Perfectly true. But when January 6th happened and he was president of the United States, he didn't leap to the phone, call the National Guard, do everything he could to stop the violence. And I think that fundamentally ended his political career the moment he made that decision.
You mentioned President Biden. What are your views there in terms of 2024?
Well, when you look at 2024, President Biden, been a consequential president, got a lot of his legislation done, but he'd be 86 at the end of a so-called second term. I don't know if he's going to make it to the end of this term in terms of he's already shaking hands with people that aren't there, calling out congresswomen who are dead, confusing Cambodia with Colombia. I mean, he's been a president who's done things. He too would, I think, be doing service to America by stepping aside and letting Democrats choose a second-generation leader. Look, I have a simple poll question. If Donald Trump was running against Joe Biden, would you consider a centrist independent instead? And 60% of America says yes. Neither of these two figures have a majority support across the country, and most people really want to move on and recognize their service to the country depending upon which party you're in.
Have you asked via Harris poll or otherwise what a DeSantis versus Biden race would look like?
Well, DeSantis has been steadily coming up every month in the poll. He was down at 15, then he was at 19, then he was at 23. He has been gaining steadily 3 to 4 points a month as he took clear stands on issues. And look, what he did in Florida was to unite Florida. He's the politician in America who took a whole bunch of people who voted Democratic last time and got them to vote Republican. It wasn't that he just nudged across the finish line by a single point. And America is looking for somebody who's going to do that for the country. Maybe DeSantis is the one who could do it, maybe not. I don't know. But he did do that in Florida. He is now a major competitor. There have been polls since then who show that he's ahead of Trump in a Republican primary. Previous to that, he was losing to Trump in Republican primaries, but Trump was under 50, right? He was still vulnerable, and Trump hasn't had people really meet him face to face in this new world yet.
You know, I want to step back a second and talk about Stagwell, because a lot of leaders are very nervous in this environment. It's very polarized, you know, the whole red state, blue state. First of all, I love the fact that the way I see it described is always challenger network, you know, sort of challenger group. Well, challenger to what? Tell us a little bit about kind of what's the model and what are you disrupting?
Well, we try to be the Tesla against the GM and Ford in the advertising industry. We are the digital first, data oriented, transforming marketing group that really is taking on majors that have been in place for 40 years and really slowly transitioned over to the digital marketing world, and reluctantly so, and have billions and billions of dollars of useless legacy assets. So we think we're more nimble, we're more data oriented, we have third generation creative, and we're really combining them together in a way that modern marketers are finding well. That's the right combination of targeting, of data, and creativity that really works. And so we're taking them on, and I think that now when we go into pitches, we're almost exclusively pitching against the big four. We're never pitching against a mom and pop shop otherwise, and that's why we're gaining share.
What's your message in terms of what are people perhaps getting wrong in terms of the approach, the dumb money that they're trying to reach consumers right now? You know, in terms of you're in the pitch room, pitch me.
I think that first you got to understand what kind of product you have. If you've got a mass product like Coke, you should be sponsoring the Olympics. Don't do all this targeting stuff. There's still efficiency in that kind of marketing. If your diaper, if there's only 3 million women giving birth and 1 million already has a child, so they know what diaper they're using, you got to find 2 million people, right? In a 45-day period, you need a first-rate data operation that finds who could be your customer and floods them with information in that particular time. And that's what modern marketing is about. Modern marketing went from having big tentpole events, a Super Bowl spot, a couple of broad things, into finely targeted marketing to reach your consumers with appropriate advertisements, and advertisements that get them right to the finish line. They don't just give them brand advertising for the store. Get them to your website. Get them buying now, right? And that, I think, is what customers want. And so our operation is built to do that, to understand your customer funnel, understand how you can increase loyalty, and understand how you can bring new customers in through these digital signals that they put out.
So talk a little bit about the platforms. Let's go to the obvious one, Twitter, where I know there's been, I don't know if it's an exodus of advertisers, so I'd be curious about that, but certainly a lot of talk about its attractiveness under the current regime of Elon Musk's ownership. What do you think?
Well, I'm really surprised about people saying that Twitter is now unattractive. Twitter has been unattractive for a long time. It's been a total sewer. It's been the single worst place on the internet for years. That's why Elon Musk is taking over with Jack Dorsey's rollover investment, I might add. So everyone knows that Twitter mobs became kind of oppressive elements of online. So I don't know why people were advertising there before, right? Now I think people are taking a wait and see attitude. I think that Elon Musk has developed the electric car against all odds. He's put satellites in to create a Starnet internet. He's launched spaceships. I think he can handle Twitter. I'd have confidence that he's going to get to a good product. First of all, Twitter advertising wasn't that much to begin with. It was
Right.
less than, maybe 1%.
So he was wrong. He was wrong to blame the activists, because that was one of the things he basically said. All the activists have been pressuring advertisers to pull out. Is that giving too much, basically, power to activists?
No, I don't. I'm not saying that he is wrong about that. I think that there's a huge activist notion that he's going to open up Twitter and it won't be as favorable a place for activists, and it will be more open to conservative speech. But they're creating this notion that he's creating kind of a hellscape. It was a hellscape. Okay, I think he's going to kind of bring this back to being a more reasonable medium, and he's done some remarkable things. I think it's okay for advertisers to take a wait-and-see attitude, but I think 3 or 4 months down the line, I think he will build a new product that is a healthier product for both the country and the world.
So, gut instinct or data, which platforms are interesting to you right now? Because we've seen, big layoffs at Meta, Google, not quite sure what to think about that. Obviously, it depends on the product, but what's rising on your radar and what's falling off?
Well, first, I've been in big tech, so oftentimes
that's true.
In good times,
Chief Strategy Officer, Microsoft.
In good times, they tend to hire a lot, and then they look for an excuse to let go a number of people. So I think they're taking the first excuse to trim down their payrolls. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're in any serious trouble. I think Google is really, really quite strong. I think you just have to look at the landscape now as being a more competitive one. That we were always concerned that everything was going to be Facebook or Google, and that the growing power margins of those two companies would make digital advertising inefficient for advertisers, number one, and second, eventually get rid of agencies like us because they would take over those functions. Well, that's really not what's happening. You've got TikTok creating lots of competition for Facebook. You've got, I think, Amazon and Walmart marketplaces creating competition to Google. And I'm really excited about Netflix bringing advertising, because now if streaming is going to be ad-based as well as subscription-based, that opens up whole new territories for us. Look, what we're really seeing now is that the streaming companies led by Netflix are adding an advertising tier. And that's great for us, and it's also great for small businesses, right? What was the promise of the internet? The promise of the internet was low-cost, targeted marketing. And that really wasn't happening because two companies got so much of the margin right here. And the more we see competition and CPMs go down, the more effective online advertising will be. And what's happening is there's real competition now. The networks have to face competition from Netflix. Facebook and Meta have to face competition from TikTok. Google has to face competition from Walmart and the Amazon marketplaces. Prices are going to go down. Digital advertisements aren't going to be an unlimited quantity anymore by one or two companies. And that's good news for A, what we do to sort out this mess, and B, for the small businesses themselves, who found it increasingly difficult to scale up digital advertising for themselves.
What about the fact that I can go on my smartphone and say, do not track? I mean, that certainly was devastating to Facebook, and Meta being the parent company, but is that something that's impacting just the attractiveness overall, the privacy concerns, and this move toward I own my data and you better compensate me for it?
Well, we have to, I think, educate consumers and regulators better. When consumers say, oh, I'm buying socks, don't track me, what are they doing? They're making selling socks more expensive. They're adding to their own cost of socks, but they don't realize it. Now, I know consumers don't want their mail read, they don't want their texts read, they don't want their prescriptions and medical stuff read. That should really be off limits. But consumers should be re-educated when it comes to shopping for various things, cars and handbags and socks and what have you. The more information they give, the cheaper it will be to reach them, the lower will be the cost of goods, and it's actually a benefit to them. and they've been scared into the opposite. What is the sock company going to do? Send them socks, right?
Well, okay, you've got global next to your name, Stagwell Global. So let's head over to Europe. Is that a cautionary tale in terms of, because there are very strict privacy regulations there? Is that what we want to avoid? I know you've also expanded to Asia. I mean, where does the U.S. sit in sort of the global context of consumer power?
Giving companies responsibility to maintain your data responsibly is good. Having everybody, every time they go to a website, click yes or no, that's a waste of everybody's time. What they really should do is let us make some master choices. Okay, I'm good for all these websites, but I'm not good for healthcare. I'm not good for this, right? And make those master choices. Let them be applied automatically. Don't tie up and gunk up everybody's experience for no real reason.
Given the experience that you have, how do you manage this stuff yourself? You know, so do you feel like, do you open your data to the world and the understanding that you're going to get cheaper socks as a result of it?
Yes, you're going to find me. I'm pretty much exactly what I just recommended. I don't like people reading my mail. In fact, when I found out at Microsoft that Google read your mail, I set up my own mail server at the time. I don't want people having my medical information. But when it comes to everything else, when it comes to whether I like, you know, pickles on my hamburger or not, it's okay.
Your experience in politics and the whole approach of how, you know, political campaigns are run, given the world that we're in right now and how polarized that it is, do companies have to take a similar approach? I mean, if I'm a AT&T, I operate in blue states, red states. How do you navigate such different tastes, since we have these highly personalized campaigns, and yet it's complicated? I mean, people come to you, I'm sure that's one of the big value propositions you offer.
Well, look, the whole promise of both politics and business was to get the right ad to the right person at the right time. And so that means really understanding who the consumers are in the different parts of the country or different parts of lifestyle and life cycle, whatever's really relevant to your product, and tailoring messages that are not inconsistent with each other, because then you'll be tagged as a liar, but stress those things that are likely to help you. Or, you know, even the kinds of stuff that we do in e-commerce. We should, when you go to an e-commerce site, already know a lot about you and already be able to put those products that you're most likely to buy on the front of the e-commerce site, saving you a lot of time and possibly getting more efficient sales. So I have always believed in targeted marketing. I brought targeted marketing to politics before it was common. I believe that we have moved to, you know, I have this whole thing that originally, you know, the economy was the Ford economy. You could have any color you want as long as it's black, right? And then I say we moved to the Starbucks economy, right? 55 varieties of something that is black, right? Mm-hmm. And now we're in the Uber economy, which is an infinite number of varieties. In Uber, you can pick any point to any point. So Uber has to create a product on the spot to satisfy virtually any need.
Too much choice can induce paralysis, though.
Too much choice can actually produce friction, because people divide up in their choices and they stop making it. But in terms of the economy and what we're trying to do to satisfy you with products, I don't really worry about too much choice really hindering your ability to buy the right clothes or the right jewelry or whatever really suits you. I worry in politics that in fact the choices we've given have divided people up in ways that have made them less unified. That in many ways in politics we need to stress unity, but in business I don't have to stress that.
Well, how do we get back to the middle? Let's go to the politics. I don't know if you ever look out the window and go, what have I done? But from that idea of the polarization and this information loop, I feel like, you know, you would know better than many people. How is there a village green now where people come together, and how do we recreate that?
Well, our politics are more polarized than our people.
Right.
Right, in the sense that
I agree.
Most issues can be resolved. You know, people want to have a working immigration system. They want the border closed. They
Yep.
want a number of people to be able to come in. They want, they want family members to be able to reunite with each other. People want better education in their schools. They want something closer to, some fiscal responsibility in the budget. The truth is you can find 60, 70% agreement on almost any issue. What it really is going to take is a leadership that goes back to that as a goal. When I worked with President Clinton, that was our goal. The president's ratings was in the 70s.
This is Bill Clinton, of course.
Mm-hmm. And before that, if you go back in history, Ronald Reagan had ratings that were in the 70s as well, that they really bridged across the gap, even though they came from very different perspectives. And they both guided the country for close to a decade, right? And I think that a lot of the divisions, right, calmed down because of that kind of leadership. I think lately leadership has been about their party and their way. And that's why we're in a 50-50 country. And until we get someone who really both promises that on the stump and then actually delivers it when they're president, we're not going to have a unified country.
Is there anyone you look to as a possible candidate for that?
It's hard to say. I think we haven't really seen what Democrats, could emerge if there's an open primary. And obviously Ron DeSantis managed to do it in Florida. So he's somebody who's showing that, Governor Newsom in California seems to sail to re-election there. Maybe his electorate is not as divided as it is in Florida. But I think now that maybe America needs to look a little bit more to governors who also have experience administering kind of large
Not senators,
states.
not junior congressmen, governors.
Right, and that maybe it's time to get somebody who's got some administrative experience, particularly as the problems seem to have grown, and that the senators didn't, in a surprising way, we thought Obama would bring the country together, and that was his whole, his whole presentation when he originally got elected, and then by his second term, that's not the project that he really carried out, and Trump obviously, ran his entire his entire 4 years dividing the country up and really only going to the 50% that was Republican, and that was a huge mistake. Bill Clinton, when I worked with him, realized after the midterms that the only way he could get reelected was to bridge out to the center, and so he reoriented his policies. He reoriented that, and even he was headed in the wrong direction until that wake-up call. The problem is Joe Biden didn't get that wake-up call. I don't think Joe Biden's going to be running for re-election, and so he's not going to change course.
Whether it's through polling or you're just looking at the digital landscape, how important do you think it is to really be getting that new generation into positions of power? Even Gen X, frankly, seems like youthful compared to today's Congress.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that, because young voters typically don't have a broad perspective on the issues until they have a family. And once they have a family, suddenly taxes, it's like, I taught polling at Harvard for 5 years before the pandemic, and it was interesting. If I asked the class to come up with questions on climate change, oh my God, I got hundreds of questions. I said, well, okay, let's do some questions next week on taxes. They didn't have the foggiest idea. They'd never heard of the capital gains tax, the payroll tax, the gas tax, none of it. So I do think that you have to be careful that if people are in politics before they really begin to get a full range of experiences and what they know is school and college, their political views and what they do may not be what those very same people would do 5 years later. The failure of people in Congress to really understand what the technical revolution was about is quite obvious when you see them try to question Mark Zuckerberg. So that's a problem too. It's why I thought I didn't understand why we'd never had an Internet Commerce Commission. We had a trucking commission. Every time there was something new, a railroad, an FCC, we would set up a group of experts that would really understand it. And so from my vantage point too, at Microsoft, I saw how the regulators just didn't understand what was going on. And so they would come out with kind of knee-jerk, political responses, or, oh, They think the consumers are happy, so they're not worried. They don't really understand how the marketplace functions. So I don't know whether that's a function of age or education, or that senators today aren't senators what they used to be, right? And it takes a lot of investigation, study, and great staff. And usually, look, they have great staff that should be technically savvy, but they have shown so far a very limited understanding of the technical revolution.
So is there particular advice? Again, you've got a wide range of clients, but there is certainly, if you take economic headwinds, it would seem there's less money to spend, so you want to spend it better in this environment to motivate people to buy. What do you sort of advise? And I feel like it's like a Rorschach test. Let's take metaverse. Should I be in? Should I have be setting up shop right now, or is there a different route?
Well, we're really big on augmented reality. So I think that is in a couple of years.
Real world experiences that are enhanced. Is that the right way to?
Yes. So you're looking at me, and then out of my head it comes, Chairman and CEO of Stagwell Inc. and so was chief strategist. So I think you're going to see in a couple of years here glasses that are going to give you instant access to facial recognition-based information databases. And that also going to open up a whole other world. I think that's far more powerful than the metaverse. I think the metaverse might be great for concerts, it might be great for some activities, but it is not going to be where people really want to live. I mean, if for those of you who remember Star Trek and the holodeck, okay, they didn't live at the holodeck, right? They would go there sometimes, right?
Right.
And so I think that he made a big mistake. We focused on AR, and in fact, at Stagwell, we came out with a recent experience where you go to the stadium, and because you don't have glasses yet, you hold your phone up and you see a whole new experience. And we can have a whole new set of sponsorships as well. But this is a way of engaging particularly younger fans in a game upon the game, right? And then they can play all sorts of games against the 50,000 other fans.
How do you measure success? I mean, are there any metrics coming out of that exercise? I mean, the stadium, if I did that, did I buy more or is it just an experiment to get me used to going to a stadium that way?
Well, right now we found that it was principally younger people,
right?
And they spent an average of a half hour on it. So the fact they spent a half hour meant they found it engaging.
Right.
And of course we're just
testing. What game? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
The game they're playing.
Great.
And the fact then that they're in, they were engaged with a second screen anyway, but they were off doing something else. So now the fact their second screen engaged them in activities related to the game but more fun. This is taking off. We're already signed up the LA Rams. We're in the second stadium. There are 2,118 stadiums in the world with over 10,000 people. And our goal is to sign them all up. And then it'll be funded through sponsorships, advertising, because that model works. But it's going to provide engagement and fun in an augmented reality way. And that's where I think people should invest.
What is the role of the advertising agency or any sort of agency in this environment that was supposed to disintermediate this group of people? You're now building up a firm, have built, forgive me, I mean, you're already a massive firm. What is the role, has the relationship changed with your clients in terms of what they should be coming to you for in an ideal world to optimize, that relationship?
The best relationships with companies like us is always you come to us with your problem.
And your money, right? Just take it, Mark, and just go make me successful, right?
Well, but you kind of have a problem. Like, why are you going to change companies or, and the leading problem people have today is how are they dealing with digital transformation and are they getting the most out of the change from what behavior was to what it is today? At Microsoft, I kind of learned, look, every company and function really has a digital layer of some sort. And the question is, what is that digital layer? Have you perfected it? And are you then getting a competitive advantage out of it? So you come to us, and we could help you build that digital layer. Like, if you're a grocery chain, maybe you don't want to give all your money to Instacart, and you want to have something similar. So that's really quite important. Or you've built the digital layer, and now you've got to get people to use it or adopt it. And that's where we find research, online targeting, digital transformation. Those are the fastest growing services that businesses need. and then we supplement it with the right creative and kind of interesting experience. I always say that the best TV ads probably already been made, but the best
That's
digital
sad.
but the best digital ad surely hasn't been made, right?
Because the technology's not there or the creativity's not there?
It's sort of a combination, you know. Most digital ads, when again, they're very simple, like, you know, get off us.
Right.
They're not really engaging experiences, and I do think that Netflix coming on will open up a bigger opportunity for addressable, engaging experiences, as opposed to things that are grafted from TV. You know, I think you have a whole new generation now, and part of what we try to do is instill with everybody, hey, you know, think creatively about the medium of digital advertising and how it can be made less annoying and more engaging, right? Something like the Around experience is an engaging experience itself, and then we could put in little ads that also pay for it.
Recency bias might be the right way to put it, but you know, you've seen in politics and advertising and business opportunities squandered and opportunities realized, and we're in an environment right now where there's a lot of fear, you know, about many things: inflation, politics, climate. What do you think are the risks that if you take the long view, you talk about the speed of transformation? Is there anything that worries you or should worry business leaders about opportunities that you see being squandered?
Well, business leaders today are just worried about whether the economy is going to go down or not.
Too much so, or?
I don't know that they're too much so. I mean, I always explain that we're part of the consumer economy that the Fed keeps saying is too hot. So the reason that we
Still?
yeah, they're still saying that, which is why, you know, we're not finding the kind of downturn because we're the problem, so to speak. So when it gets to us, then that means they will have solved the problem, and then the market will realize that, well, okay, we've got to go up. So look, you know, what I would say is, look, we were nearly wiped out as a pandemic. So I don't know that we're really focusing, if I look at the big problems, sure, we have to manage our economy and get inflation down. I'm not sure chemotherapy for it, that is throwing people out of work in order to get inflation down, is really the right strategy. We're not really questioning that.
Nobody solves cancer with chemotherapy ideally anymore, right? We're supposed to move beyond that.
It's very tough medicine. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
And I do think, you know, fear about Russia, fear about atomic and nuclear weapons, fear about another pandemic. We clearly underestimated, you know, what could happen. We were all afraid of terrorism for so long, and that seemed to peter out. And then, you know, climate change is kind of the number one, you know, priority, particularly of the Democratic Party. But I say, well, why are we not spending a lot of money on pandemics at the moment? Because we lost, what, 5 million people,
yeah,
you know, across the world on this. There's nothing else that's really, you know, even the atomic wars that we had, you know, nothing since World War II has really cost us 5 million people.
So what keeps you up at night? Are you an optimist right now, or are you worried?
I'm always an optimist. Optimism always is what keeps me up, because we always become a better country. We're a far more adaptable species than we realize, and we'll adapt to, you know, the changes that really occur here. And I do think that if anything, you know, both America and both in generally just people have been underestimated in terms of how they adapt to change.